We are at the Squirt factory today, and we're going to be discussing some new developments that's been taking place. I'm Jacques Turon. This is Jacques Holzhausen.
Holzhausen, yes.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about a new development, Hotwax, which is a hot topic. Our research laboratory is here at the factory, and we're going to be talking about what happens here and how we see the future of chain waxing.
Yeah, hot wax, hot topic. Pardon the pun. It's a good topic to be on now.
Hot wax is really an extension of what we've been doing for the last 20 years, where we introduced the first waxing water emulsion.
What was it? 2004.
2004. Yeah,
I think 2004.
That's when we started introducing the first wax.
Yeah, the first
water emulsion, and changing the industry to a large extent.
You know, when we started the business, we actually developed the emulsion wax to move away from the drag of hot waxing, because 20, 30, 40 years ago, that's what people did to get clean, quiet drivetrains. We saw in our research and in speaking to a lot of the athletes and enthusiasts that use the hot waxes that is available currently, what shortcomings are there, what irritates them, what can we do better? And so that's what we focused on. And our development philosophy has always been to solve problems, not just develop something to have it available in the stable. And we believe that we can make the hot wax experience and performance better. I think that's primarily why we decided to invest in this development.
Some experimentation was done, especially by Jason Smith of Friction Facts, that determined that wax lubricants were really, really efficient.
Yeah.
And at the time, the wax drip lubes were really rated as the best efficiency lubes. It's resurfaced that wax, if you do the waxing and you have the right additives, that a solid wax or a hot waxing can be even more efficient. Yeah. So the criteria that you used, what were the most important points in terms of, what do we want to achieve?
Well, I think first of all we wanted to make sure that when we develop a hot wax, that it has to be compatible with our existing and our future drip lubes. So there's some very interesting developments that we're doing on new drip lubes as well. So we needed to ensure that it's compatible in the waxes that we use, because in the hot wax system, you have to have a top-up lubricant, a top-up wax. So that was primary for us. And then I think the second part of the development spec was basically to address 4 specific points. And the very first one is it needed to be a very efficient wax. There was no question about that. We have a very specific aim and a very specific client base for that. Then durability is also important for us, naturally. The third point was, and we can talk about a little bit more about that, and that is the break-in period for hot waxing. We wanted to address the current shortcomings in the market. And then the last point, which is sort of almost a natural outflow of waxing by itself, is your drivetrain needs to be functionally clean. You don't want to have grinding paste or calf tattoos or something like that. So those were the four main aspects we had in our development specification.
What we found in our research is a relationship between efficiency and longevity. Now, a lot of the hot waxing that's been going on for the last few years and that had been tested by zero friction cycling is that it really gives you a good durability. But the durability is not necessarily related or linked to the efficiency. One would think that the efficiency, the more efficient it is, the
more durable it should be.
The more durable, the longer it would last.
Yeah,
Our specific research shows something quite interesting.
Yeah, super efficient lubes may not last as long, but it's horses for courses. What do you want to achieve with the tool that you have available? So it's a trade-off, in any development. And we focused on getting the middle ground of having a very, very efficient Hotwax, and that has, adequate endurance for, pro teams, for, enthusiasts, right? Just cycling enthusiasts and tinkerers, people who really do care about their drivetrains and would go the extra mile and invest the capital in actually going, the Hotwax route.
In the criteria that we used, the break-in time was also something that we worked on. What exactly is break-in time? Because normal lube doesn't really have a break-in time.
Yeah, no, it's not as prominent in the drip emulsions as it is in the Hotwax. So the break-in time refers to that period of time that it takes for you to, from when you take your chain out of the crockpot or the molten wax until it is at optimal efficiency on your bicycle. So it's that whole time, and that's what break-in time itself refers to. So if you've been hotwaxing, you'll know that when you take your chain out of a crockpot, it's cooled down to room temperature. It's you can hold that chain straight up. It's as stiff as an arrow, straight as an arrow, and that is because the wax fills all the cavities in the moving. The chain consists out of a whole lot of moving parts. You've got rollers and you have inner and outer plates, and the wax in its molten state fills all those cavities, penetrates in, and when you take it out and it cools down and it solidifies, that wax actually sort of almost fuses all those moving parts together, and you have to physically now move, articulate all those moving parts so that the wax can actually break loose a bit, and to make sure that all these parts can move freely. And that is the action of what you have in a break-in time.
Now, so the wax can also be considered then a vehicle, not only as a lubricant itself, but as a vehicle to take some of the additives that we use into those cavities where it really matters.
Yeah, it's a carrier. So we have various additives that we have in this Hotwax formulation, and that is from friction modifiers, that is high pressure additives. We have some anti-wear additives in there. So it's a fine balance. It's an anti-wear and a friction reduction system that we have in the wax matrix, and it's not just one wax that we use. It's different waxes, 4 different waxes actually, that we use in this.
Give us an explanation about break-in time and efficiency, and how do they relate to each other?
The best would be to refer to some of the testing that we do in-house, and in future episodes we'll also look at our test protocols, our test machinery, what we do, how we do separate effects test, how we do integrated testing, how do we characterize parasitic losses. So that's a whole video in its own, which I won't go into. But just looking at the data, for instance, that we have on just the first half an hour of a break-in period for two waxes. So the one wax that we're looking at here is a popular Hotwax developed and sold developed in the USA and sold worldwide. And the other wax that we obviously benchmarked it against is our Squirt performance Hotwax. And on this graph, what we see here is a graph of efficiency on the y-axis versus time on the x-axis. And this time is just a half an hour. So efficiency, this is 100% efficient means 0 losses, and that does not exist on Earth. So if you try to be as close to 100 as possible. So higher in this case is much better. And what we see here, in this specific test, we use exactly the same chain, and we coated that chain with the one wax, and we just did a basic break-in, and that's just to make sure that all the links articulate properly, that we don't damage our drivetrain, because what we did see is if you don't make sure that it articulates properly, you know, all the some of these hot waxes actually could rip your derailleur off. So we made sure that it just articulates well, and then we put that on the efficiency test bends. And what we see here and what's interesting is when you start this test, this specific hot wax starts at an efficiency of only 74%, meaning you have 26% losses. That's really inefficient. I mean, that's worse than a dry bare metal chain. You know, so that's terrible. And then it starts, you know, once it starts breaking in and the waxes start to shed and all the rollers and inner and outer plates, you know, sort of, you know, move freely. You move up after 5 minutes, you could move up to 89%, and then after 10 minutes you're at 92%. And then 20 minutes, and then after half an hour, it sort of levels out at about 94%. And then after, you know, 3 or 4 hours and 6 hours, that goes up to about 94, 95%, not really much higher than that. And then we ran this for 24 hours just to see, you know, what it does. But we'll discuss that, I think, in a follow-up video. So the difference then when we look at, for instance, the Squirt Performance Wax is that it starts off right out of the pot at 94%, as opposed to this other wax, you know, leveling out at 94% after half an hour. So this starts at 94%, and you know, very quickly after that, you're almost at 97%, and that gets better, you know, as time progresses up to about 97.5.
It has to do with wax selection. So the testing that we've done was varying the waxes, changing additives. Absolutely. Until we got to a formulation that's really strikes that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been 3 years of developing and you know, altering between not just the waxes but the ratios of waxes. Like I said, you know, we tested some of the best waxes that you can find, functional waxes, and that has, you know, that have shown really exceptional endurance values with anti-wear additives as well, and we can get endurance values way better than what's currently available in the market, but that's not what we aimed for, and so this is what we aimed for, and I think we struck a balance, you know, in this development.
Yeah, with the longevity additives really. You do compromise on efficiency if you add those.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's well known. It's well researched as well. So I think we struck that balance. So this is it from the two Jacques. Thank you very much for taking your precious time to watch this video, and we look forward to your comments.
Yeah, and like the video and send it to your mechanic, and we'll see you next time.